Okay. I think we're in. Okay, got it. So welcome to the planning board meeting. This is July 2nd, I'm sorry, June 2nd, 2022. First order of business is to attend to commercial development review ordinance amendments as we address the commercial solar facilities. And when last we met as a large group, I know we had a group anyway at our last meeting. We talked about some things, but thought we would want to make sure to talk with you too, George, when you return. Because we had gone through some things, had some suggestions, had some ideas relative to the memo that we had gone through before that you'd written. So I think we wanted to make sure to get some consensus on that and then move forward. So if we could, and let's see, I think where we were with that one.
I did have an opportunity to review the YouTube.
Okay, thank you for doing so. And so maybe to start, where would you like to start?
No, I think we should clear up the remnants from the last meeting.
Okay.
I know one had to do with wooded wetlands.
Yeah, the buffer from wooded wetlands. And then we put off clear cut until everybody was here.
Hey, Pete, welcome.
Hey.
Okay. So what number was that, Craig? Were we on from that?
Oh,
one?
I don't know.
It was like,
Wetlands?
was it
12.
12? Okay, yes.
And I had
Right.
proposed that there be none, and I gather the discussion is maybe there should be. And Rich offered a compromise. I don't know if it got much traction of having a 75-foot setback if the wetland's larger than 5 acres or larger. That's kind of,
Right. And so that compromise, I think, was offered up because we had a discussion about like, how much stuff was, in a parcel, right? And if there are wetlands, what does that leave you? Remember, we're talking about some of that. Craig, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't know. This is gonna be comparable to, can I build right up to the wooded wetland?
I don't feel strongly about this. I only did it because I know state law, the state program doesn't. And the primary value of wooded wetlands is really for stormwater control and flood protection. Some will be deer yards, as we found previously at one of the subdivisions we looked at. And so then that setback would come into play, but I'm fine with a 75-foot setback if you want to be uniform across the board. Or a buffer, I should say, consequently a setback.
Around any wooded wetland? Or are you putting a size to it?
I'm fine with any, because I think the mapping that the U.S. Department of Interior doesn't go down to a real small scale anyway. So I don't know exactly how precise they get, but I'm guessing that it's going to have to be several acres in size anyway to even show up in their mapping.
I would have to think so too.
Yeah,
It'd be several acres.
so I'm fine with that. That's
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm following you guys. So what you're proposing is what is now at the bottom of page 10, just delete the references to wooded wetlands so that that sentence would end 75-foot setback and naturally vegetated buffer from wetlands included in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Natural Wetland Inventory, period. Is that correct?
yeah, and eliminate except for
Yes.
wooded wetlands.
And
And so you want to eliminate the next sentence as well.
Yeah.
So just to kind of clear the air on that, so the idea that Rich offered up, that compromise about, the 5 acres and stuff, are we good that we're not gonna entertain that at this time?
Yeah, I'm fine with
You're
that.
fine
Like
with
I said, I'm guessing that their level of scrutiny is such that, it'd have to be several acres or more to even be mapped.
Okay, and I would agree with that, because things too small are, I don't want to say they're insignificant, they can't, it's hard to view what they are trying to indicate,
Yeah, particularly on something like that that's heavily based on the soil types.
right? All right, so if we're good on that one, number 12, are we ready to move on to the prime farmland discussion? This had been something that I think we've been thinking about for quite some time. I know months ago, we talked about this a little bit. And thank you for this suggestion. So are we all together on 13 here?
What page 13?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm at the bottom of my printout, which is, and maybe this is not correct for you guys, but it is page 5 of 8 where the suggested wording
So you're
reads.
looking at George's.
Yeah, it's in
I
my
am.
now.
memo, Craig.
Is that the right way to do this, or do you want to go to the other one?
I thought we already did farmland, no?
So Anthony had suggested, I don't know if you guys discussed it or not, but moving this as a prohibition further up in the ordinance.
Yeah, so it would be under citing prohibition. So as I was looking at it, it seemed like that was a citing prohibition. So my suggestion is to move it to the bottom. And now the document that you have before you, it was moved to the bottom of page 8.
There is one substantive thing I think would be worth discussing some, and that is, I had originally written it up as no more than 10% of the total project area. And that comes from the guidance that the state put together, the Department of Agriculture put together, but I later learned that that's in conflict with the definition in the state statute of farmland, which relies on 5 acres. And the definition in statute, which I didn't bring enough copies for everybody, but I can read to you, it builds into not only acreage rather than percentage, but it also whether it's really actively been farmed rather than fallow soil out there. Farmland means any tract or tracts of land, including woodland and wasteland, of at least 5 contiguous acres on which farming or agricultural activities have contributed to a gross annual farming income of at least $2,000 per year from the sales value of agricultural products. And then there's some caveats that go on, but that's the gist of it. Got this thing in there. A parcel of land on an island may not be considered contiguous to a parcel on the other side of the river, which seems kind of obvious to me, but so the only question I have for everybody is, do you want to stick with the 10%, which comes from that set of guidelines that Department of Agriculture came up with, or want to change that to 5 acres? I recall Steve Boxbaum at one point, and I don't remember when, this was quite a while ago, indicating that if you went with a percentage, you would penalize projects like his that are more modest in size, where I don't remember the exact size of his, but it's like 20 or 25 acres. So you're taking potentially 2 acres out of use. Whereas if you have an acreage thing, you're not penalizing the small facilities quite as much. But it doesn't really matter to me. It's more a matter of whether you think it's important to be consistent with that state definition of farmland. And I don't know why. It seems like the state's actually in conflict with itself on this.
So what would we have that would be considered farmland? Probably up the road.
Yeah, any of the hay fields in town, I would think. Certainly
The Bickford Farm.
the two farms, yeah. I mean, if you relied on it, having to generate some income, that's the only things I can think of where people are generating income off of farm income.
Right.
In Belgrade, I mean, in other towns, obviously there'd be a lot more, but
We've already got, behind here, a number covered. What's that farm there?
How would that be substantiated though, if that's a private endeavor? How would the town know how much money is, or how much income?
well, yeah, it gets complicated. That's the problem, I think. And I wasn't gonna suggest that we use the definition from statute. I was gonna suggest that we either keep it the way it is or just replace it with 5 acres. Because I don't think we want to get in the business of asking people, okay, how much money did you earn off this hayfield last year?
Yeah, I know, we have to check what. the tax
Yeah,
record
I mean,
or something.
that's,
I would like to avoid that.
yeah,
Um,
really none of our business.
It really is not any of our business.
I only bring it up because it's conflict with statute, that's all.
So if we left it like how it's worded here. Craig, when you're thinking about those farmland areas in Belgrade, do you think that this 10% as is worded would be a problem? Or might you prefer altering this to go to 5 acres? The 5 acre pot.
That's, I don't feel very strongly either way either. Whichever would fit us the best.
So if we didn't adopt the state statute, but use 5 acres, might it read, let's see, protect prime farmland and farmland of the statewide important agricultural soils land. And then how would we do about the 5 acres?
Well, I think, Peter, all you would need to say is no more than 5 acres of the total project may be located on land with soils defined as.
Right.
Okay, so if we did that, that would mean that, let's see, you're basically capping the amount that would be on prime farmland. That's what we're saying. Saying no, not more than that.
Mhm.
I'm good with that. How do you all feel about that? You good, Pete?
Oh, okay with you.
All right, so that sentence would read no more than 5 acres of the total project may be located on land with soils defined by U.S. Department of Agriculture, blah, blah, blah.
And you're eliminating the 2,000, the revenue piece.
There is no revenue piece as is written.
Okay.
But you're right, though, we're not going to go by the revenue piece by the state statute.
Yeah.
That part that came from the definition, which seems to be. in
So that would
conflict.
have to be changed in the citing prohibitions. Anthony.
Yes, yeah, okay, and you guys feel like, to me, that we're prohibiting the siting of these things on 5 acres of prime farmland, so that's the reason I put it there. Is that agreeable to everyone? Do you think that's the right placement of that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm pretty sure that we require them to do the soil analysis required as part of the application material that they have to submit, so.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I'm okay with it.
I'm gonna eliminate that.
I'm okay with it. Craig? Pete?
Yeah.
And I can see Sarah says, I'm good with it too. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah's zoomed in, so she's chatting. Excellent. Okay. Okay, great. Had we gone over 14, 15, and 16 already before?
We previously went over the fencing.
Yes, those are, I think those are all in,
I was gonna ask though about 15. Yeah, no, that's been done, I got that checked off. 16 is the one that I wasn't sure if that had been addressed yet.
Oh,
I think it was at the last meeting. Let me do a quick search of this time.
16 was,
All electrical system installations be performed by or under supervision of main licensed electrician.
yeah, we took care of that.
Okay,
Where is it, Craig? I'm not seeing it.
I don't know, but I can remember
I remember.
reading on that.
I'm gonna-
I gotta find it. Just-
You know, I'm not, I recall talking about it, but I don't see it in this document. So where do we think that this? Which section should that be?
so I'm thinking not citing.
so there's an item. Well, in my memo, it's number 3 about being designed by a main registered electrical engineer, maybe after that. So it's designed by an electrical engineer and installed by a main electrician. Makes sense.
That would make sense to me because that seems like it's a standard we're looking for to have approval. It's a logical segue from one concept to another in my mind.
Document. Just so it isn't helping.
I see it.
You find it?
Yes, I did. And so that sentence right now says the solar energy system shall be designed by a main registered electrical engineer. And then I'll just add to that, all electrical system installations shall be performed by or under the supervision of main license.
Yep, that'd be good. That's
So if you
fine.
have the newer one, it's, I believe, page 9, the letter C.
Thank you, Richard. This could be Sarah coming in. And then was it, I think next for us was just talking about the clearing of land, right? That was one thing we wanted to talk about. Are we all okay to move on to that topic?
Yes.
So maximum area of clearing of land that is primarily forested or wooded vegetation. And then I think in George, in your memo, you said include and then question mark, how much clear cutting is too much? And then how much negates meeting the objectives of the comprehensive plan regarding the character of Belgrade as well as otherwise. So where are we with this one?
I don't recall, did you guys discuss this?
No, we tabled it.
No,
until
table is
everything-
right.
Yeah.
So I offered 2 possible alternatives. One is to, just set a X number of acres is the maximum limit. Or some kind of incentive for a developer to minimize the acreage cleared, like, well, the example I gave, for every acre they clear a forest, they have to somehow protect as open space another acre in Belgrade. The problem with the latter is it's more complex to administer and requires tracking and all this other stuff. So in that sense, it would be simpler to have a maximum acreage.
Well, for our purposes, I like the simpler method. Although conceptually, the other part does offer a more sophisticated
Well,
outcome.
it's sexy.
Yeah, well, but it's not unlike other things that happen at both federal and state governmental things where you,
Well, I
There are
was thinking of
trade-offs.
wetlands,
yeah, exactly.
that kind of thing. But that you have to, you have to have the systems in place to be able to track that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
and that may be a challenge for us.
I would dare say it would be a challenge for us because we are resource constrained as it is.
So isn't there like a 15-acre maximum? What's the state maximum clear cut?
100 acres.
Thank you.
But I can't clear cut to put a subdivision on. I'd be good with the 15, we'll go in the middle.
15.
15, I'm okay with 15. I think that's,
So it could be-
I mean, I don't have a lot to judge this by, but I mean, 15 acres is a substantial clear cut in a town like Belgrade.
Yeah, it would be.
And,
Well,
Yeah, I
do
know.
10, I mean, I don't want 10.
you know, I suppose the consequence of that is that somebody that, I mean, I never thought until the proposal off of 811, I came along, I never thought anybody would propose, it wouldn't be cost effective to propose a real large clear cut for the purposes only of a solar farm.
Mhm,
Obviously, I didn't know much about it, but
mhm.
you know, if you place a limit, unless it's a very large limit, you're pretty much excluding larger ones that are exclusively in woodland. Just so that, you know, we think about that, but I personally can live with 15 acres.
Let me,
I'm sort of thinking, it's a new tech, it's a new industry, it's new technology, especially up here. You know, we could, you can always go up, increase. So if you go on the low side, you know, you're allowing, you know, the business to go on, et cetera, and they can make the money at it. And if later in the future, you know, later on, if the demand, the increase acreage, you can do that. You never, it's like, it's hard to go back and reduce it.
Yeah.
So I just assume, where it's a new industry, you know, where you're gonna have to feel our way through. I'd like to see about 10 acres.
no, Pete, I'm kind of leaning towards 10 acres too, but maybe for a different reason.
Okay,
Not opposed to what you're saying at all. I agree with what you're saying. I'm curious too, at one of the meetings that the place up here had with the DEP application, I know one of the town's residents was there and they talked about the value of the forest and what it accomplishes for everybody environmentally. And how that, to take away the trees would be counterproductive to then put up a solar panel in its place, from the example that was given at the time.
Great. Yeah.
And you might remember
Yeah,
that comment.
well, no, I wasn't
Oh,
at that meeting, but
okay.
I had thought of that myself,
So,
in terms of carbon sequestration.
correct. That's exactly where I'm thinking of. So, I don't know, like Pete suggested, starting off small is not a bad thing, I believe. There is value in the wooded acres that we do have. I guess I will suggest and back Pete's idea of 10 acres to start with.
Because you get it on the hill, everything on the lakes are on the hillside.
Yeah,
You know, I was at that meeting
yes,
and I listened to what they had to say too. They made a lot of sense, and the amount of water that it absorbs. And they didn't really have any good answers on how to, they said just bring it to a ditch and
Mhm.
let it run down. And so, yeah, I'm fine with 10.
So from a carbon sequestration perspective, maybe some other
Yeah,
things.
this was before we actually started work on the ordinance, but I had that same question in my mind. Where's the tipping point, or where's the break-even point on how much woodland you clear where the sequestration outweighs the amount of benefit in terms of replacing carbon dioxide emissions to the atmosphere by using solar. Well, I was having a hard, I came up with some information. I mean, obviously, a lot of the large woodlot owners sell carbon credits on the open market. But they have tens of thousands of acres. And as it turns out, Steve Buckholm actually turned me on to some research that's been done about that. And we're not even in the ballgame. I mean, you're talking thousands of acres to come up with the same amount of benefit to the atmosphere as a relatively small solar power facility. So I'm not sure that's the issue I originally thought it
Okay.
was. But because I was thinking ahead that, well, maybe at that tipping point is where we, before that tipping point is where we put the limit, but we're nowhere close to that.
So we're well under, no matter if it's 10,
Yeah,
15.
I mean, we're talking thousands or tens of thousands of acres. The other consideration is that we may have a facility that's proposed where most of it's in a field, like a hayfield, old hayfield, but between clearing of wooded buffers for the roadway and the power line and then maybe some additional expansion, that's all going to count to whatever cap we come up with.
But there's not gonna be much in the hayfield.
I'm sorry.
There's not gonna be a lot in the hayfield.
No, there isn't going to be a lot in Belgrade hayfield.
Because
There's just not much hayfield.
We just decided that. So I think it's more of the water consumption on the hillsides is my biggest concern with the whole thing, because either that, you just build new brooks and new water and, because those trees, what was it, 40 gallons for,
Yeah.
40 gallons a day for a 5-inch tree, 4-inch tree.
Mhm.
I mean, so you take a hillside like where they want to put it over there, that's eliminating a lot of water. That's going to be running down that hill where they already have water issues in their basements.
Well, I'm fine with 10 acres. I mean, they're still going to have to do a stormwater runoff analysis anyway.
Mhm.
And, as you said, woodland infiltrates a lot more water than grassland does. And certainly more than something like this where you're going to have an increase in impervious surface area. So anyway, I'm fine with 10 acres.
One last question about this. I think this discussion is good too, to help answer your question about, negating, how much negates meeting the objectives of the comprehensive plan regarding the character of Belgrade. So specifically about the character of Belgrade.
Yeah.
I think going to the lower end speaks to the character of Belgrade rather than the upper end. That's my personal take on this. So I want to make sure we addressed your question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I having a 100-acre clear cut, even with buffers and stuff around it, I'm not sure it's really consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Agreed.
Yeah, it isn't. So it is not consistent.
Okay, so are we in agreement then? 10 acres then? Thanks, everybody. I think we're in good shape. So we're
So
saying,
let me ask you a quick question. So do we think that, because just looking through here, I'm not finding a good place for that to be. So maybe it just needs to be its own letter under understanding sourcing.
it makes sense to me. Its own letter or number.
And just borrowing some of the language here, just keeping it really simple and concise. I've written, please weigh in here. the maximum area of land that is primarily forest land or the maximum area of wooded vegetation that may be cleared for a solar facility is 10 acres.
By the way, the reason I use that term wooded vegetation, I was thinking of the clear cut down the street from me. Which now has a lot of sprout growth on it. And I could see that, somebody coming along and proposing that for a solar facility.
Good. Okay, so I think we're good there. So that, are we in agreement too, that not only is the wording appropriate that was just said, but that would be under its own, basically enumerated standard of approval? It would go under that area. Anthony, you did that?
Yeah, so I mean, what I've done right now is I just put it between setbacks, minimum setbacks and visual screening requirements.
I can live with that.
That's fine.
Good. Okay, are we then on to number 18? Well, it's a shaded. And that was in George's memo. Should we require a minimum of 15% of the developed land area to be reserved as open space? As has been required of subdivision since the late 80s. So did we talk about that a little bit last time, Craig? I think we did, right? Because we're talking about consistency across ordinances and that kind of thing. And so let me ask the group this. We had talked about, and Sarah had put together a nice chart and talked about the setback from the property line. That puts people away from the property line, right? Or puts some development away from the property line. Are we then also asking, see, 15% would to be preserved for open space? Does any of that count towards it?
That's historically, at least earlier, at my first stint on the planning board, that's how it worked, that the areas protected, either at buffer or whatever it might be, could count towards the 15% in subdivisions, that is. And that made it more appealing to applicants. But in the Rocky Shores Estates subdivision, they went a step further and, well, they actually protected more than 15% as open space.
So, like up here in this proposed one up here, there's multiple properties. So if they're only listing, leasing, or some of it's gonna be leased, some of it's gonna be bought. But if they're not buying the whole acre, the whole property, then that remnant of that property can't be used as 15% open land. It's gotta be in the amount of property that they're leasing or buying. So if they're leasing 10 acres out of a 20-acre property, then that other 10 acres doesn't come towards their 15%.
That's right. So the wording I used, based it on the acres that are actually developed or disturbed.
Right? It almost doesn't matter if it's leased or owned, right?
Right.
It's total leased or total disturbed.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it does matter because so if they disturb 10, and this, I mean, if they're only leasing 10 and they disturb 10, then that property, well, I guess if they're leasing 15 and they disturb 10, they would be covered. As long as they're leasing more than what they're disturbing, 15% more. It would count.
I understand what you're saying, and yes is the answer, right? That, let's try and come up with a good example. I don't know if I can come up with one.
I lost the thread over here. Can you recap that again?
Well, I was just concerned that, if they're just leasing, that they're not including the other part, even though it's on that same body. So they're leasing this amount,
Yeah,
that they're not including this amount for the 15%, even though they're not leasing it. But they can only, the way it's worded is, you can only do what the property they're leasing and the clearing is doing. So, yeah. I was just bringing it up because there's multiple properties, there's
Right.
5 years and there's several properties
Plus, it's a
involved.
mix and
And
match
it's a
of purchase
portion
and
of
lease.
each property, it's not a whole property.
Yeah,
Right. Because you come up with some kind of wacky thing of for them to say, oh, well, we have this 3.5 acres here and this 1.5 acres here, and then another 10 we're gonna buy. And so you come up with a total of eventually maybe 15 or something acres. What we're trying to say is, whatever it is you lease or buy, all of that, you have to have 15% reserved for open space. And the disturbed area. Let's see, how can we say that? Well,
so the 15% would be driven by what the acreage is it's actually developed,
right.
regardless of whether they own it, lease it, or whatever.
Yeah. And so are we good with that, that the leasing or buying does not matter?
It doesn't matter, and I think with what we have with all the buffers and setbacks and I mean, most of that's gonna be taken care of in that, everyone's.
In my,
So,
And so are we also in agreement in thinking that whatever is a setback due to buffers or whatever, that can be part of the 15% that's reserved for?
as long as they designate it as such.
And they have to do that on the plan.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, well, having the subdivision. I had to do mine at the bottom of my subdivision towards the lake, and the wetlands and stuff, which actually created a better situation than doing it from setbacks on my property lines.
It is.
So I had to do it at the bottom, so I have 4 or 6 acres somewhere, I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't
Well, you're
know.
protecting more valuable land.
Yes, so, I was required to put it down there.
Oh, that wasn't your decision.
It might have been partially with my engineer probably. But I have quite a chunk down at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's non-buildable.
Mhm.
It's probably well above 15%. Yeah,
So if you got, wetlands and shoreline there, there's setbacks anyways, so
yeah,
they can't really go in there and develop it anyways,
Right.
so. The 15, so the question is that 15% gonna count? That part of the 15%,
I think what we're suggesting is you indicate it on the plan. If you don't indicate that setback from the wetland as part of being reserved for open space, then you're gonna have to indicate it somewhere else
Mhm.
on the plan.
Okay.
I believe, George, am I capturing that correctly?
Yeah. I mean,
So-
maybe we want to
So you want to do that?
add some language that says
You want to make it more restrictive?
that the,
I just want to make it more restrictive.
that the acreage to be reserved as open space is to be shown on the site plan.
Does open space need to be defined?
Ooh, good
Interesting
question.
question.
Yeah. Because one might say, is open space a setback that includes a wooded buffer?
Yeah.
So if we have a 200-acre farm,
And
it's
instead
gotta
of,
be 30 acres, 15%.
That would be reserved for open.
I'm pretty sure open space is defined in statute, but I couldn't recite for you what it is. Because there is a program to provide tax incentives for protecting open space.
Is there a definition page in the ordinance?
well, the ordinance has
Yes.
definitions.
Yep.
Because we're just adding to the commercial
Commercial,
development.
right,
provision.
Right.
So,
I wonder, instead of using the term open space, might we consider just saying that a minimum of 15% of a solar facility's land area is to be reserved as undeveloped?
Should be
Or
undeveloped
open
area.
space.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
we,
it's a pretty common term.
Yeah,
so the,
I just wouldn't want someone to do some clear cutting and say, well, we've opened the space.
That's exactly- I was-
It's now an open space.
Yeah.
good point.
I think you're right about, at a minimum, adding the term undeveloped
undeveloped.
Okay.
in there.
So undeveloped exclusively will mean that however the landscape looked is gonna be left intact. Because undeveloped to me means that it doesn't
Maybe
have
there's-
houses in it.
Undeveloped and natural open space.
Yeah.
As it was, as the status quo was when they acquired the land. I don't know if
I know what you're saying, and I agree. It's like,
how
as
to
it
express
is,
it, yeah.
untouched, don't mess with it,
Yeah,
don't develop it,
Yeah.
don't cut it.
I
However,
think the word natural gets us there.
oh, okay.
Now my question is to exclude the setbacks because
I'm trying to put my
leaving,
spreadsheet here.
leaving the upper properties as undeveloped and setbacks isn't really gonna help the lower part going towards the lake. So if this thing's so long that our setbacks alone off of the, if they're way up on top of the hill, what are they doing to the bottom of the hill? Towards the lake.
yeah, so if we went with what we have now, in and by itself, the answer would be, I think, maybe nothing. But we also have some other tools at our disposal, don't we, with
Stormwater
Yeah.
control.
stormwater control. There's also the aesthetic, what did we call that thing
Visual
before, the
impact.
visual impact analysis? That too is gonna play a part, I think.
Is there a limitation on the slope of the land?
Yes.
Yes.
Was it 20%?
Mhm.
Yeah, the resource protection.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah, I'm not trying to advertise this as an especially meaningful way to protect open space, because it won't be, but it will be consistent with how we treat subdivisions.
do you think that we have sufficient tools so far
Yeah,
with what we have
yes.
listed?
Or we could just add the terminology on the lake side of the development.
Yeah, that's something to talk about, sure.
So like on this example up here on the hillside, what we're saying is that the 15% on the lakeside, how would you say that?
On the lake side of the development,
Okay.
pretty clear cut.
Make it
What
clear.
about one sort of like sided like Steve's where
There is no.
there is a lakeside, but it's not even visible from the lake?
Yeah, so that wouldn't, they wouldn't really have an effect on that one, because it's really not a lakeside to it. I mean, there is, but I think it's actually,
Yeah, I would, I'm getting a little twitchy about all the redundancy. I mean, we already have visual impact assessment, visual buffers, to deal with that kind of an issue. I'm not sure this is the right tool to try to do that.
Try to
Just
do,
for the, I think for a solar field, it may be appropriate. And, this is getting away from being consistent with non-solar field, yeah. But if like solar fields are, we're gonna treat them as a solar field. They're different from typical type of development, so.
Well, they're only different in the sense that they're gonna be bigger. All the other issues are the same. Stormwater runoff, phosphorus runoff, visibility.
yeah,
It's
the problem with that, though,
it-
what they're calling impervious is just the pole and the base. So they're minimizing it to a point where it's really not factual.
Well, the way we're defining it, the surface area of the module would count as impervious as well,
Say that
and
again?
rightly so.
Could you say that again? I didn't get muffled when you said that.
The
Panels
The,
and
the
columns.
surface area of the module, the solar panel would count towards the amount of impervious surface area.
Right, like a roof would.
Yeah,
All right.
just like a roof would,
And we talked about that before,
yeah.
because that was one thing that Craig, I think, brought up in terms of equity with other things.
Craig, I'll meet you halfway. How about if we exclude the buffers, all the other existing buffers from this 50%, so it's above and beyond that.
Yep, it works.
so just a reminder, we establish setbacks to be 125. So whichever the optimum that they were able to use a property there will be 77% of that property. So we're taking off from the 100%, we're taking off 15. I did about from the 100%, we already by the buffers, we most likely will take 23%. So we adding the 15 on top of the 23, or that 15 is part of the 23.
It's with the buffers and the 15.
So then any developer then is 77 minus 15. They will not be able to develop, they're only going to be able to develop 60% of the property that they purchase.
Like he says, we can always change it in the future if you want. I think it's a good starting point.
So we could add something like areas included in buffers and setbacks shall not count towards this provision.
Okay,
Mhm.
and so this would
That'll
be,
make it a little bit more meaningful in terms of what's actually being protected.
so this would be a standard of approval, right? This one would be I'm saying that for Anthony's sake.
Yeah, so what I've done is put clear cutting and open space in one paragraph. So that paragraph now reads clear cutting and open space. The maximum area of land that is primarily forest land or the maximum area of wooded vegetation that may be cleared for a commercial solar facility is 10 acres. Additionally, a minimum of 15% of a solar facility's developed land area is to be reserved as undeveloped and natural open space. The acreage to be reserved as open space is to be indicated on the site plan. Areas included in buffers and setbacks shall not be included in the open space provision.
I think that
That's what it
captures.
You said 10%?
15%. Did I say 10%?
I thought you read 10%, never mind. I just still tinkering with this in my head. So if I have an area that I want to develop, let's say, to make the numbers beautiful, 10 acres. I'm gonna be with the buffers that we have set up right now, I'm gonna be able to develop exclusively 77% of that. So we're talking about that I'm gonna be able to develop a little bit over 7 acres. But then on top of that, I had to cut back down 15 acres. So,
No,
I mean, 15%, which is 1.5 acres. So I'm gonna be able to develop only 6.5 acres,
5.5.
5.5. Even harder. So I only gonna be able to develop half of the land. Kind of.
Yeah,
At
but
this,
that goes up, the bigger that it goes, so. Yeah,
I would not invest here for sure. That's okay with me. But I just,
I know it's restrictive, right?
it's gonna be very restricted.
Okay, are we all set on that one?
and just the way we wrote it.
We good?
Yeah.
All right. I think the next one was 19, use of herbicides to manage vegetation within the development is prohibited.
I think we addressed that the last
Okay,
year. Let me,
Yeah, you did.
that's done.
yes.
Okay. And what was the last one? How about 30, within 30 days of completion? So number 20, are we good there?
Yes, we've done, yes, we did that.
So what else do we need to talk about with this? then?
There was one item that I thought you left unresolved, and that had to do, and not in my memo, but on the working draft, on the last page, D, inspections. And there was continued discussion, was my impression, of requiring soil sampling.
Oh, yeah.
And I had for, you know, a routine monthly inspection, I had come up with this language and suggested it. But I have a suggestion for all the discussion about soil sampling made me think that that would not be a bad thing to include as part of the decommissioning plan. That at the time of decommissioning, before the property is either sold or turned into another use, potentially agriculture, and this is standard operating procedure for other types of industrial land uses, that an environmental site assessment be required. And this language that I've left up on your desks is what I came up with. Rely on the site for testing and materials standard practice for doing environmental site assessments, which is what DEP uses. And it would be part of the decommissioning process, and decommissioning wouldn't be complete until it was completed and submitted to the code enforcement officer. Richard will be walking like this at that point in time, and he will get keen and drooling out the corners of his mouth. But
Is that next Wednesday?
Yeah.
But, and that would be a more precise way of ensuring that you would find any leaks or discharges of oils or hazardous substances. Without, a soil program, sampling program, random or otherwise, across tens of acres of land is not going to do it. It's not, you're going to miss 9 times out of 10, you're going to miss the contamination. This would be a more precise way to do it. It's consistent with standard operating procedures for other industries. And that way, the town's assured that the property has not been detrimentally contaminated at the end of its life. Anyway, for your consideration.
I really like this idea.
As
Because it's,
far as soil testing, but shouldn't there be a visual inspection and done every couple of years or something?
Oh, no, it wasn't intended to replace the visual inspection, it was to complement it. So the monthly physical inspection would continue,
You know?
and this, and if they find leaks, they gotta report it and clean it up to DEP standards and all that. This sort of branched off from your discussion about soil sampling in the context of an inspection. And I think this is the better way to incorporate, to achieve some of the same goals of ensuring that the land has not been detrimentally contaminated, but to do so at the end of its life as a solar facility.
Can we add?
You're making me nervous over there, Craig. With your smile.
Well, you sell a house on a lake, you get to inspect the septic system. So can we add upon sale and decommissioning,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
upon sale and decommissioning? So we know each time it's getting sold,
Yeah,
it's a clean property.
yeah, no, that, I mean, a prudent buyer would insist on that anyway.
you're saying upon sale and or
Because these-
decommissioning,
These trade hands a lot,
okay,
so just to keep tabs on it.
right,
So we're not requiring it every month, we're not requiring it every year. But every time it trades hands,
yeah.
we have a clean slate.
That's an interesting you bring that up, because as I understand what I've read about a little bit, a lot of these entities or the party funding these solar fields, they're doing it on an investment basis where they get investors come in and they put up the funding, and then at some particular point in time, they're gonna sell the original put these packages together, they're gonna sell it out there in the marketplace. So you're gonna see a lot of changing in ownership going on in a 10-year period.
Mhm.
Well, we don't know because it's a new product, so that's a good suggestion for that reason. So keep that in mind.
So Craig, I did add, I have this language in here, it's about halfway through. It says the environmental site assessment shall be completed in accordance with American Society for Testing and Materials, and it gives the standard practice number and all that. Prior, as revised, and prior to the transfer of ownership or change in use of the facility site. Is that adequate, or does that need to be beefed up some?
No, I didn't actually see that, so prior to the transfer of ownership.
Yeah,
Or
almost.
change in use. So that takes care of it, doesn't it?
Mhm.
it does. And I think it's a good concept, because when these transactions occur, there'll be a track record of what's going on there,
Mhm.
right? So this is a good thing.
So you just, what you're talking about, the verbiage is in this?
Yeah,
right here.
What line?
Is the line
Prior to
right
the
underneath
transfer.
the number of the standard?
So I didn't see that.
Well, I wrote it and I forgot it.
I think this,
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Good.
yeah, I think
Glad we
so.
talked about it.
Yeah, very good. very good suggestion. I like the standard language that's used in here. Excellent. Okay, and I think we addressed the other question too. It does not take the place of the visual, right? Right, that, because that still is gonna happen. This is other stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. It complements that. Okay. Any other loose rounds to cover?
The one, this wasn't discussed at the last meeting, but, and I know we're out of time tonight, but well, maybe we'll have more time because of something that we've been discussing with Richard, but the one thing that we agreed upon, but we never put pen to paper on was an amendment in the body of the existing ordinance where we would extend the life of the permit for everybody from 12 months to 36 months. And in my email, I mean, it was a simple change. I suggested that, the simple change that would be required to make that happen. You may recall, Steve Buckbaum laying out the timeline that he's required to go through, and a lot of which, most of which is not under his control because it's under the control of the PUC and CMP. That 12 months is just, impossible to start substantial construction. So I think we need to come to agreement on the language to make that happen.
So you're suggesting 36 months?
Yeah,
And
Yeah, we-
then an extension,
a 1-year extension
so 4 years.
for everybody.
For everybody as far as houses and projects and
Well, only in the commercial development review ordinance.
commercial.
So it applied not just to solar, it
Right,
applied to any
Right.
other commercial.
I mean, I thought we had agreed on this, but maybe not.
No, not 4 years. What about 2 years with a year, come back for an extension?
That's 3 years.
So that'd be 3 years.
My understanding is that might not be long enough.
Because of the PUC,
PUC and CMP.
CMP, and
I mean, he's
'Cause
been
we have-
negotiating with CMP for over 12 months.
Well, this, again, you can always change it for, at a later date for the solar farms if we find it may be necessary.
Well, I'll say this, though, you guys don't want to be rejiggering ordinances that you've already worked on every couple of years. That's.
Well, yeah, I
Wait,
understand.
let me finish. Pete, let me
Okay,
finish. That's inefficient work, and it also leads to the public doubting whether or not we know what we're doing. If we're asking them to continually change ordinances that they just approved.
Well, that reminds
It's
me
not,
of,
it's not, in short, it's not good public policy.
yeah, well, that reminds me of once being at a legislative hearing where a legislator said, well, if we don't get it right this time, maybe we'll get it right next time.
Yeah.
Like I said, it really undermines your credibility.
Okay, that's a good point. However, you gotta keep in mind that solar fields is a new product. It hasn't been really tested. We're in an embryonic stage of development, so I think you gotta be careful in trying to come up with an overall standard. And, I can understand where you come from, if you're right. But I think in this particular case, it's a new, again, I'm thinking of it as a new product out there, and for a service, it's a new product. And as far as development goes, it's a service, what do you want to call it? Think about that.
Well, I think one of the other ways to look at it too, though, is this going to benefit developers of all sorts of commercial projects, not
Yeah.
just solar farms.
right.
I mean, any developer that, runs into problems with getting financing or getting their environmental permits from the state or the feds would benefit from this as well.
Okay, I believe we're putting together a good scout ordinance, so
Yeah, can I ask
the
something?
extension would only be 1 year, 3 year with a 1 year extension.
Were you back to the 4 year?
Yeah, just for commercial.
Hmm.
I think we have a good ordinance put together that's.
And within that 36 months, they have to start, they must have completed substantial, started substantial, I'm sorry, let me get this right. The term is a substantial start of construction.
How do you define substantial?
It's defined already in the ordinance.
40%.
What is it?
Top of my head.
For the extension,
Substantial.
Yeah, within that 3-year period.
well. Is that gonna help him, because he hasn't started anything?
Well, that's the way the ordinance is currently written. That I didn't propose, I didn't suggest to change that, but
No, I don't wanna change it, no.
I mean, the same concept used in the
I mean,
two-land zoning.
substantial is like, say, 50% of it. Like
I'll be
Greg
honest.
said, that'd be awful hard to do.
Substantial start, the completion of 30% of a permitted structure or use measured as a percentage of estimated total cost.
All right, well, it's defined. All right,
So
it is.
that's. You need to do that in the 3-year period, but that's not to get the extension. I mean, if they apply for an extension, it's just like Hello Goodbye down here. They applied, they had no start. So
Right,
the 3 years to get an extension, you don't have to start anything. To keep your permit active without getting an extension, then you need your 30%. But I feel confident in the ordinance, so I guess I can agree to that.
you okay with it then?
Thanks, Craig. Sarah, I want to make sure you had a question that was started. I want to make sure we get that.
I was just trying to understand Craig's threat on why he will be objectioning to it, but I guess we're already with home.
I think we're over the hump.
What was your thought in pulling that?
Well, 3-4 years after the fact is quite a long time. I mean, what happens in town after that? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, how do people feel after that? It's 4 years down the road.
Mhm.
That's quite a long time for something that was permitted, where right now it stands, you can have 1 year and a 1-year extension.
So
So
you,
you're only tying up 2 years on a permit. Now we're tying up 4 years on a permit.
so I guess, I'm trying to understand where you're going with all of it, how you made the curves here. So you're thinking maybe about the ambition of the person that was permitted to, that they just got the permit and sit on the permit and do nothing, that there's no pressure from the town for them to finish? That's what you were getting at?
Now, what possibly having a permit sit out there idle for 4 years is a long time. I'm gonna agree to it.
Sure, but
So,
I understand, but why will be a bad deal? I just
because
I
you
just
don't
want to
know,
get your wisdom.
4 years is a long time to have an idle permit sitting out there, because you never know what changes may happen in a town in that 4 years. You know, it's just a long time. You can't just give a permit out and say, we don't do it in any other thing. So you don't just give a permit out and say, get to it when you want to. We have a 30% rule. You have to start within a 30% within a year
Okay,
right now
okay,
to keep it without an
Sure.
extension.
okay.
And they can come by and get one extension for 1 year. So you're only tying up 2 years on a permit. 4 years is a long time on a permit. That's all I'm saying.
So you might be concerned that they will give the permit, they will just start it and leave it at 30% and leave that without going anywhere.
What happens to the properties beside this property?
But that's,
4 years?
that's exactly where I'm going with
You
it,
know,
yes.
That's a good point. Craig.
Yeah,
You know.
they
what
put the
happens-
property value just go
Yeah,
down.
So we give them a permit.
Yeah, and they didn't deliver.
and Then all of a sudden, 4 years later, there's something that would affect this permit
Uh-huh.
next to it because they hadn't built. So
Hmm.
4 years is a long time to have it floating out there.
Yeah, this is tough.
It is
thinking.
tough. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully,
And
say
it's
the
just not
abutter-
solar fields, it's gonna be all commercial,
Right.
yeah,
so.
or, you know, use a different example, a gravel pit, you know, another large scale development, a new gravel pit in town. And it takes them 3 years to get going. And somebody builds a house next door, doesn't know, you know, the worst would be that they didn't know that the gravel pit was gonna be there, because they might have chosen not to build there. But, you know, if we've done our job as a town, they would have been notified at the time of the application,
Correct.
and that wouldn't have happened. There's still a risk there, because with, you know, let's say they bought, whoever develops the house bought it after the application had been approved, and it's just a question of how far we can go.
Right.
You wouldn't be
Reasonably protect others.
interested, you wouldn't be as interested in 2 years and then 1 year extension, right?
So, okay. I follow it. Can we grab the 4 years and do it in like an evergreen steps? Meaning that we will grant the 2 years that you want, but then they can have 2 extensions, one with every 1 year.
No, that's it's tying up our time. If we're gonna do, if you set on the 4 years, and we're just gonna do a 3 more.
It was an offer, right?
Yeah.
That was an offer,
Yeah.
so, but I understand what you're saying. I guess,
I appreciate you explain this.
yeah, it was good
Thank
to hear
you.
that. And I wanted to also say that other commercial things which will be affected by this, I think non-solar activities, so some other commercial thing, their financial model doesn't have the same dependencies that this one does. And I guess I would expect that other commercial activities would be motivated to get going if they could afford it.
But
Not
Hello
all
Good-
of them.
I'm gonna bring up Hello Goodbye again, but she must be coming up towards the end of her section.
Exactly, I know.
So that's not quite the case. I mean,
It didn't work out for her
Yeah.
so far, right? And, you know,
So can we just then said that we want to do the 4 years for solar development and the 2+1 for the rest?
No, I'd rather do it the same for everybody.
Yeah.
I think, I'm believing in our ordinance, so I'm good with it.
Okay,
me too. I'm good. You good?
I'm
Sarah?
good. Yeah, you guys are good.
Pete?
I wanted to understand the reason. behind it.
I rather shorten the period of time. But anyway, that's me.
It
Okay,
is a long time
it is, understood.
for everybody. I mean, if it was,
So can we use that language then?
Yep.
George, yeah. Yeah, so Anthony, do you have that language or some example? Thank you. Is that it for our discussion on the solar development?
So I think just looking ahead.
Yeah.
Just remember, under our timeline, you guys need to wrap up your work at your next meeting.
Yes,
And there's still the issue that has not yet been addressed, I believe, of stormwater runoff.
I'm not sure, I hadn't thought of that, because I had just assumed that the same requirements apply to all other
Well,
developments.
unless that's going to be the approach.
Yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't be adequate, but there are a couple other things that we need to, we don't get to it tonight, then we still have on our plate. One is, are we good with all the new and amended definitions? I think we are, but I don't recall. Second would be, how are we going to present this to the select board? I made a suggestion in my email that was shared with everybody, but it would mean a fair amount of reformatting.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is going to have to be reformatted. It's kind of all over the place right now.
And
But it's a working document.
And then at our next meeting, we gotta be prepared to make a vote on, our final first draft, if you will.
Yeah.
And, that we're good with sending it to the select board.
Exactly.
I mean, it's all over but the crying after next meeting.
Right, which is where we want to be. I want us to be.
And in the same token, I think it's also important to look through the notes, the side margin notes on this, just to make sure that everyone's good with, if there are any hanging questions out there, everything's good with where everything's placed,
Ah,
all of that. So I
Gotcha.
mean, that's really important, you know.
Yeah.
I think to look at beforehand and then to go through those quickly at the next meeting
okay.
in order to make sure that everything in that regard is resolved.
So it is to the stormwater runoff, because that was your question, Anthony.
Yeah.
Like, George mentioned, you didn't think that we were going to be changing anything for solar. I was under the same impression that we didn't want to change
Because the
anything for
larger the
solar.
project, the tighter the restrictions are. So we've already got the stormwater in place for every other commercial.
I mean, the standard be one and the same. They can't have any more water going off that property than prior to development.
So I don't see why we have to mess with it.
Yeah, I'm totally comfortable with that idea. It's consistent. We've looked at this, I think, pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
We're treating the modules like they're roofs, Pete, right? I mean, it's not just the base, right? It's the whole thing.
Oh, that would be silly.
That would be silly. So, I'm not trying to rush it, but I think we're in good shape from that perspective.
Well, and not that Anthony mentioned this, but that's how I view phosphorus runoff too. That's the standards we have in place is based on what the water quality of the lake is. Doesn't matter if it's a solar facility or a gravel pit or whatever.
Right? It applies to all commercial development. Okay, so having said that, because I know it's getting late, Anthony, thank you for your time tonight. Looking ahead for the 16th, right, when we meet again, we need to make sure we can complete the work on the proposed amendments. We want to make sure we're good with the definitions. George, we want to make sure we have an understanding of how to present this to the select board with the reformatting that's going on. And
Yeah, so
to look through all the comments that we have in the,
yeah, and do you want it reformatted before the next meeting, or is that something we'll attend to at the next meeting? So in other words, I want to make sure if your intent is to vote on something to be presented to the select board as is, then the reformatting probably needs to occur before the next meeting, then we can tweak it if need be.
right,
Does that make
Well,
sense?
yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me so much, as long as everybody's has gone through and reviewed all the individual substantive tweaks, because there've been a number of them with each round of that you've sent it out. Because the decision we make today impacted, something that was in the ordinance, put in the ordinance, a month ago.
Mhm.
And as I noted in my email, that the language regarding visual screening, when we added the 80% obstruction rule or whatever that was, that created some internal conflicts with the language we'd approved previously.
Mhm.
And so we need to, people need to look at that, because I had offered a way around that. To keep both, but, make sure everybody's comfortable with it.
So we need to make sure we review that part, George, in particular, and any of the comments that are on the marked up thing, to look for any kind of loose rounds, right? Are there any questions that are out there? Are there anything that's unresolved? Or something that's sticking in your head?
So quick question, Richard, do you have many pending applications at this point?
You have to stick around for the CEO update. So
I'm not going to do that. The reason I'm asking is simply because I'm just wondering, do we need to allot for more than an hour at the next meeting?
So the next meeting, we do have a fairly large one scheduled. I think it's pretty big.
It's a commercial.
Yeah, it's a short one, but a large project. And other than that, I have 3 more.
So anyway, so I just throw that out there as a potential option is, you may want to.
Well, I have to admit, I'm nervous about us being able to complete our work in an hour. I mean, we run across one issue that we initially disagree on. We'll chew up 3/4 of an hour just on that.
So do we need another interim planning board meeting like we had? Which would be the 9th,
That'll be about next week.
next Thursday,
I can handle that.
and then the following Thursday is the final meeting for solar. 6.
Well, let's find out. You can handle that, Pete?
Yeah.
Craig, how do you feel about that on the 9th?
Yeah, I guess, but I don't see where we're that far off.
Well, let me ask you this, Craig, have you had a chance to look at the, this working draft on the visual stuff? Because I'm just a little nervous about that.
Which draft is that?
The one that we got in advance of tonight's meeting.
So I tell you, maybe the best way to approach this is, I think I've pretty much got everything incorporated that we've talked about tonight. I'll send it out tonight or in the morning. If everyone will commit to looking at it, and if there are any red flags, then maybe, a special meeting should be called. If there aren't any red flags, then maybe we allot an hour and a half at the next meeting.
I like that suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I would think an hour and a half would, if we said an hour and a half, it seems to me we should be, if we're efficient about how we conduct ourselves. And don't, go on a lot of tangents, then we should be able to finish it up.
So I didn't see that. So what's your concerns with it?
Well, just that I thought it didn't reflect, by adding that, what Dan Newman had suggested, the 80% obstruction conflicted with some of the other requirements we had already approved. And so I tried to come up with language to deal with that conflict. And I just want to make sure everybody takes a look at that, make sure they're comfortable with it.
So
Because there's been a lot of time.
So George did explain that in the notes of what you got,
Yeah.
and what I'll be sending out tonight as well, so that.
Yeah, so Craig, it's
For you to think about.
it's on page 9. And you'll see my comments on the side.
Anyway, so.
Okay. So thank you very much, George. So can we, I want to make sure we provide Craig with a copy that you can read
I'm gonna send it out again when I get home
as a PDF.
as a PDF and a Word document.
Okay.
So knowing that Craig has had some issues with that, I've been sending everything out as both Word and PDF.
Thank you very much. So Craig, can that work for you?
Yes.
Excellent.
So, just look for the George's notes on the side, Craig. That'll be the important part of that discussion.
And Pete, can that work for you to have both Word and PDF? Either one,
Yeah.
either one you can read, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
right. PDF I can read,
Yep.
not Word.
Okay, great. All right. So if we do that, then if we can commit to review that information, those comments, if there are any red flags, we bring them up, right, beforehand, like ASAP. If not, we're looking at an hour and a half on the 16th. Right? Then we want to wrap this thing up. And Anthony, did you get do you have a good answer for formatting?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
Because I'm thinking hedge the bet and go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so what I'm gonna send out tonight will not be formatted, and then I'll work on the formatting in the interim.
Right. I think that will work.
And George, oddly enough, I don't have access to the town manager email any longer, so.
Oh, did I use that last time?
None, well, but you sent out an email about how you thought this could be worked into the commercial development review ordinance.
Right.
Once I email tonight, if you'll send me back my personal email address, that email, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because if you start one to the town manager, he's not gonna get it.
I'm not going to get it.
So is it the email that I sent out previously that you want?
You sent one out that you said, you made a suggestion about how this could most easily be worked into the commercial development review.
Oh, okay, so, okay, yep,
You remember that?
yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks.
Have a great night. Who are you rooting for?
Edmonton. I'm a big Jesus fan.
See it.
So your suggestion is from roads and residentials, yes, I mean. For example, should we set a standard like 80% visual obscure from public and private roads, residential dwellings at a height of 4 feet in the first floor respectively? By, what do you mean by that?
So if, in that particular instance, the issue I was trying to raise was that if somebody, let's say they're developing in a field or even in a woodlot that requires some plantings, those plantings, even once they get substantial height, are not going to, they're, you know, they're not going to be as high as the second story. So we have to decide at what elevation is the 80% going to apply to. You could have 80% at 6 feet, but only have 60% at 25 feet or 30 feet. And likewise from a road, you know, I mean, I guess what I'm suggesting is we need to think about where are people going to be seeing the solar facility from or looking at in that direction from. When you're driving by and passing by a car, it isn't at 12 feet, it's at
Like 5.
4 or 5 or whatever it is. Likewise in a house, you know, are you going to be really looking at it from the bedroom or upstairs bedroom, or are you going to be mostly looking at it from the kitchen or the deck or? Because I don't know how we could ever get 80% obscurification or whatever that term is at all elevations.
The reasoning for that was so they'd be leaning towards cedar trees and evergreen trees for the screening. They
Right,
don't block that. You know, 4 feet is definitely not enough. I think it should just be from residents and roads. So if they have to plant bigger trees near a residence, that's fine, but if they plant smaller trees towards the road, then any back properties not be included. Would be my, I'll look at it again.
okay. Yeah, and it just didn't reflect what my understanding was of the compromise we came up with, because you may recall, I had said I would agree to the setback from all property lines, regardless of whether it's developed property or not, but I only wanted to see a actual vegetative buffer if what's on the other side of that common property line is an approved subdivision, not a undeveloped wood lot or whatever.
Well, we got the buffer from the property line, so that can, that can just remain a natural buffer. And maybe that's what we need to word, whatever the natural buffer is. But the 80% should just be from the residents and roads and private drives.
Yeah, I just don't know how we'll be able to achieve that though at all elevations. I don't want to establish a standard that's sort of a make-believe standard.
Accomplish it, yeah.
Well, if there's a house right side, like take Steve Osho's,
Yeah.
so he's gonna plant some taller trees along that property line where the house is. He has them there anyways.
Yeah, along the road he has, and I mean, there's some natural woodland there, but I doubt that provides 80%. Obscures that,
No, he'll have to plant, he would have to plant some more next to the road and the house, but the rest of the property back in the back, he wouldn't have to. I mean,
But
so,
it will not be instant though, isn't it? We want this buffer, but instantly will not be 80%. They can plant it, and maybe,
have you driven by Farmington?
yeah,
yeah,
there's
You
no
notice
buffer there.
about-
There's no buffer,
Well, they planted it.
yeah.
Did you notice about 40% of it is dead?
yeah.
Dying?
Well, and Augusta,
Augusta.
I mean, not that the shrubbery that they planted was gonna do anything anyway, but the little ones are all dead too. But, I mean, even if they'd done a good job, I don't know how,
Make it practical. You want to make it
Yeah.
practical.
or achievable. I mean, unless we're gonna require planting of one hell of a lot of full-size trees.
Yeah, this is, I was gonna go to that. So you can transport full-size trees, there's just a lot of money too.
It was just something that, came to mind that, as a practical matter, and something that was enforceable.
And then the other portion of it is that you can plant them little, but it's gonna take like 5-6 years maybe to reach.
Well, and I agree with your suggestion earlier, Craig, of that it shouldn't be just 4-foot trees, it should be 6-foot trees. That if they're planting them, I'm fine with that. But, I just. I was thinking of, like, I can see through, despite the fact that, from my deck, I don't know, 500 feet away from the tree service, I can see his red trucks through the trees. I don't know if it's 80% obscured or what percentage it is, but it really takes a lot for somebody not to be able to see something that has any color to it or whatever. So,
Then you got a field, and then you have hardwood trees on the other side of the couple evergreens. Well, the reasoning for this was so they plant trees that obscure.
So they will have a thick canopy.
Right.
and I agree with that.
Right.
It's at 8 feet or whatever, I agree with that. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever with the 80%. I don't know how we'll achieve it at, 20 feet or,
We don't have to. You have 2 feet of foundation. You have 8 feet of walls, so that's 10 feet to block the view from a window on the first floor of a house. That would be,
Oh,
then maybe that's the solution. I was just raising the question.
right. So to say, to achieve the 80% obscuration, is that the right word?
Yeah.
at 10 foot height.
At 10-foot height,
feet, yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
and that would accommodate I think,
Because they're gonna grow eventually and cover the second floor window as well.
right, and
So,
Right,
but I would be fine, I mean, second floor is your bedrooms, you go into bed, it's dark. Some people do have a lot, but,
anyway, take a close look at that, Craig,
Yeah.
okay?
think
so
it's-
that's probably where I'll go with it.
Well, I certainly would agree to that.
me too.
How about the type of tree? I mean, in the wintertime, you go with, maple or oak, the leaves will be off.
They
so-
can't, so it won't work. So
Right.
that's why we want that 80%, is so they will use cedars, they'll use
Okay,
firs, and
Conifers.
use stuff like that.
all right, okay.
Yeah,
That'll grow in,
to achieve that, a lot of times we're gonna have to be requiring them to plant conifers
right.
in addition to the natural woodland.
Right.
The
I'm
only way
gonna
that
go, I'm
we
gonna
can-
go in the tree business. Sell them.
Just-
Why not?
Follow around solar developers and say, hey, I got a deal for you.
So if you think that we can agree on something similar to that,
Yeah.
then I think we'll be fine with the hour and a half.
I think so.
Yeah, no, there's no problem with that at all for me.
Okay. And I'm glad you found that too, the
Well,
potential conflict.
I was just visualizing it in my head, and how do you measure it, I know in forestry, there's a special device you use for measuring the thickness of the overstory. And all it is a 180-degree globe kind of thing, mirror.
All right, so. All right, we have a half-acre visual from a lake. I'm just thinking now, yeah, if you're up above, you're gonna see the whole thing anyways. Yeah, all right, I'll review it. Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to highlight it, that's all.
Thank you, good discussion. So could we all make sure to review that, and then if we have anything to talk about,
I'll throw an email.
email it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are we okay to move on to the new business?
Are we gonna meet next week? No.
Not at this time.
Okay. Yeah.
We're planning on trying to make sure to commit to go through the review,
Yeah.
the comments.
Yeah.
Any flags, throw them up.
Yeah.
But I think right now, at least one thing that could have been an issue, we're making
Come on,
progress, we're going the right direction with it, right?
Okay.
So, thank you. So are we okay to move on to new business? Everybody?
Think so.
All right, I know it's getting late, Pete.
All right.
So, yeah, I know. So new business for tonight, we have A, commercial applications. The Sheridan Corporation, I guess are the applicants. Location is 28 Old Route 27. Map 4, lot 37. Purpose, construct a 14,540 square foot pre-engineered metal building to create a new precast production facility. This is a non-shoreland conforming lot. So this is at Gagney and Son.
It is, and so before we delve into this, George was talking to me prior to tonight's meeting. And he seems to recall that this past winterish fall time, this had already been approved.
Yeah,
And I obviously wasn't privy to that, so I was here, but, so he was indicating that perhaps it's just gonna be something that I would take care of now.
Oh, okay.
So I needed your input as far as where you got with this. I looked real quick at the permits from 2021, and I could not find this particular one. That doesn't mean it's not in the system somewhere. Gary did some odd things, paperwork, so I have to dig around and find stuff out. So, George, would you like to elaborate on what you recall happening from the last
Yeah.
time this came?
sure.
Because nobody ever said to me, we already submitted this, this is just a resubmission. I was assuming this is a brand new building. permits.
So just to recap, the general process is that for something that triggers the commercial development review ordinance, we do our application completion, application review and approval with conditions possibly not. And then and do our findings of fact with any conditions. It goes to the code enforcement officer, at which time the code enforcement officer is able to issue the building permit. And I looked at this and I thought, geez, I wonder if this is something different. And then when I looked at the drawings, I realized it was what we'd already approved under the commercial development review ordinance. And so I believe this is just an application for the actual building permit, which is entirely within the purview of Richard. You know, the only caveat really is to make sure that, you know, there's no conditions on our approval that would impact his issuance of not the issuance so much, but requiring him to put a condition of approval on the building permit. But I don't think, I don't recall, but it would be in the findings of fact all the same. And that's why I suggested to him that I don't think this is, you know, an application for us. It's actually an application for him.
So why would you have to grab a building permit after you get approved for the whole thing for us?
Yeah. That was a done deal. So, okay, so that sounds like you don't have the paperwork, you don't know. So, okay, yeah. Gary misfiled it.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, okay,
did some
all right,
research. This is the first time it was brought up to me
Yeah.
that this has already been worked.
As long as we double check that it's certainly, it looks like if there's a penny road right here.
Exactly,
Yeah, right. that's what I thought.
exactly.
As long as we double check, or you can double check somehow that this is the same building that we approved, why do they need to go, I mean, a building permit should just be automatically issued, right?
Right.
Because you don't
it-
approve the building in the planning board without.
Why wasn't it issued at that planning board meeting?
Well, maybe it wasn't the process and then Gary disappeared, you know.
I thought when we approved the permit, we approved the building as well.
Yeah. Because that's part of the permit, because that's all
Yeah.
the storm runoff and all
But
that.
we don't have the authority to issue the building permit.
That's precisely it, right?
Right.
So we have our findings of fact that go to the CEO to
Oh,
say, from
oh.
our perspective,
Okay.
because he's the only one in town that can issue the building permit in a commercial,
I see,
right?
okay. All right,
So, but we said, we went through this,
yes,
the commercial one, and said, yeah, this is a go.
yeah, okay.
And when I'm looking at this, just like you said, Craig, this is the one off the Penny Road, there's that building right there. There's the hillside behind it. I remember talking about all kinds of stuff with this one.
Wasn't the one that they have we talk about the trash cans, the trash bins in the
Yes.
back of it.
Yes,
Yeah,
Remember that
yes,
one?
yes,
So-
yes.
So I will, next week, I will search for the original.
Yep.
And then review it, compare it with this one,
Okay.
look at the findings of fact and see what, if any, provisions are in there. And I'll go from there. And I'm guessing that I'm gonna find this permit signed by all of you.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there should be the findings of fact in law with our signature.
Everything should- okay.
Or Peterson.
And there wasn't much for conditions because it's in a gravel pit.
They make
Right.
it any, I just
Yeah,
can't
don't
remember,
what
but
it was.
I mean, it was a pretty straightforward, clean cut application.
Oh,
So,
And
And
well
it
done.
might have been earlier this year, 2022.
No,
And-
no, it was in the fall,
It was
I
12.
think.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
cannot remember.
As I remember, I thought it was in the fall because it was just when we came back from Zoom meetings. And I think we
Well,
opened this
So
last
much
summer.
our help.
Yeah, it was sometime in the fall. It was just right before
the one we did this year was for the retail,
Gary passed.
the new retail.
What-
I remember doing that this year. the new
Okay,
Retail. Because I did the plumbing inspection.
okay.
I think that might be what Julie.
It was,
Never mind,
knows.
Yeah.
never mind.
it was before,
I might, I might be wrong, but I thought it was in the fall.
and
I
did
believe-
Gary
yeah,
passed
it
away in
was in the
September.
fall, yeah, and
right?
that rebuilt retail building, they're putting it
I'm sure
now.
you can tell from the back agendas.
Right,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I'll definitely dig around, especially in the computers, just and see if I can
So
dig it.
I'm gonna suggest maybe September,
Okay.
because if Gary, I can't remember the day.
See, when you're my age, time flies, so.
It was like Labor Day or something.
I'm not very.
You know, if he had,
it's fine for me.
well, no, they had the cross.
But yeah, Gary was probably pretty sick at that point.
Yeah, I can be it.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can
Okay.
come up with some.
Just
Matter of fact, I'll look in the assessor's file and maybe
Matter of
he
fact,
actually filed
Have them call you
in
anyway.
the assessor.
You found it, you did.
Under there.
Yeah.
So that might be a good sign.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just moving forward, that's what I'm gonna do, and then if we have to revisit it, we will.
Okay. And yeah, give me a shout when you get it, when you find it, please.
Sure.
That'd be great. Because I can go back through some old notes and
And
stuff.
it was a clean top. It was simple.
Yep.
Um,
And-
Yeah.
In the
As
end,
far as commercial goes.
and Sheridan did a good job presenting the information I recall too.
Well,
think
they
we should-
already had a stormwater management system in place at DEP. had reviewed.
Yep.
Through.
That was an easy.
So this is gonna be in process and best wishes finding that. I think once you see it, you'll say, oh, this is what was approved and you'll see it. Okay. All right, so if we can move on from that one, the next one is the CEO update. So did you find the old commercial app yet? No. Just kidding.
The update is no. So essentially, I got 3 applications, with the 4th being completed. Next week will be Kathleen Thompson. They are renovating one of the structures at one of the camps here in town. I mean, to somebody like Craig, it may not look like it's that big of a deal, but to somebody like me, it looked like it was a pretty big. They're essentially taking the whole building down and reconstructing it. And it's actually gonna be a little bit more conforming, I think. It is in the shoreland zone, so, and I think that things will run a little bit smoother after the commercial solar is done, because we will have that hour to take care of permits, so I don't feel as though I'm backlog right now. I feel like we're doing good. I've issued like 3 permits this week, non-shoreline. I think I've done 53, 54 total this year.
Wow.
We have actually all of us combined in 49 plumbing permits. So I just sent the select board an update as to everything that's going on with me, and you guys are obviously privy to these meetings. I didn't include you folks in that, but they are now. So and what on town, our complaints, moorings,
Mooring, what's that? What's going on with that?
people putting their moorings in front of other people's property.
That just passed, right?
What's that?
That just passed, or what, something mooring,
We have a mooring ordinance
Yeah,
that
when did that
passed,
pass?
was it 2 summers ago?
Yeah.
I think
just
so,
about,
yeah.
oh,
Was the summer before COVID, so it was like 2019, I think.
Oh, Jim, okay.
so who regulates that? You do, right?
Right.
All right. So kind of give me an overview of that. I just I kind of heard about that.
So the way that the ordinance reads is essentially, if I have a home here and I have 200 feet of frontage on the water, inside that 200 feet, nobody can put their mooring out to 200.
So, okay, out 200 feet.
So it's like you have property pins here and here.
uh,
From there on out, straight through the water, nobody can put the mooring.
Out to 200
200
feet.
feet.
Okay, what if it's 100 feet? Property.
Oh, it doesn't matter, whatever size your property, you got 50 feet, then that's your property. In other words, it's essentially extending your property into the water. I don't know.
Another 200 feet.
200 feet.
Okay,
Out to 200. Yeah,
But 201?
But you gotta kind of judge that with the property line, so,
right.
you know. So the property goes like this, over here isn't this.
Right.
So you
So,
have to take your property line and extend that out into the water,
right.
both sides,
Yeah.
to figure out
Yeah.
if this is.
So you hope, I hope like heck, every time I show up is a pin or something. And one of the situations I'm dealing with right now is there was a pin when I first went to inspect this area. I went back today and there's no pin. And there's a lawyer involved and it's getting kind of complicated, but it's being dealt with. The gentleman who's encroaching is being very good about it, so. And I think that in the future, we probably need to include dock ordinance in the mooring or a separate ordinance, because the thing was that this gentleman's dock was encroaching as well as his mooring. And he said to me, but we don't have a dock ordinance. I said, well, you damn right, we don't. So I technically, I don't have a leg to stand on the dock, because I have nothing to back. However, I can make it move his mooring, He moved it, but not enough. And I know where the pin was. Because the owners of the property put their dock right on the pin line. So I know exactly where it was, and I have a feeling the owners of the property moved in for what reason.
Well, we do have some sort of work verbiage that the dock can't impede traffic, impede on other people's property, don't we?
There's nothing in the morning ordinance about.
They won't be in the morning, no, it says a
Which
different
ordinance
ordinance.
was it?
I wouldn't know.
Wouldn't be in shoreline zoning.
No,
No.
I couldn't find anything.
There is no door.
Is it a
Generally-
state, is it a state?
I have not gone that far. It might be, there may be such a state statute.
Because I know you can't. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure you can't take your dock and put it out in front of another property.
Right.
It's gotta extend from your property and it can't impede traffic. I know that.
Right.
And you may want to just check to see what the state's rules are. We don't have an ordinance, yes. But I think we just abide by what the state's standards are.
Anyway, it's there's quite a bit of building going on. Mostly extensions, decks, sheds. Few new houses, but not many.
So I got a question on the, you said that one of the camps here. What particular camp? was that?
I wish I could tell you before you leave the whole paperwork. You wanna know?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Yeah. Is that public information, me?
It is, I just don't remember the camp.
Oh, whereabouts is it?
It's not Moden,
I was gonna say, is it Moden?
no, it isn't Moden. And I gotta complain about them too, as well. And I guess they're putting in more and more lighting, and the neighbors are concerned about it. When the kids get there, it's gonna light up like a football field.
Okay.
They're gonna be blinded at night.
At their baseball field?
There was no specificity to it, it just said more lighting.
Just so you know, that baseball field got approval under the commercial development review ordinance.
With lighting.
I don't recall.
But it did come to us.
Yeah, and then down in the village,
It was an after the fact permit application.
Yeah.
and down in the village, the barn down there, they're renovating the inside of it, and
Oh, down in the village?
I get a lot of calls about that. As of right now, I went in there yesterday and they're reconstructing the inside, which I had nothing to do with. But there is a shower enclosure in there, no fixtures and no water running to it yet. So when I spoke to Doug Frame in the past and said that you need a plumbing permit, if you're gonna do it plumbing. He agreed to get one, but of course the natives are restless down there wondering they doing what, if he's gonna have a commercial entity, he's not supposed to, there's no parking, et cetera, et cetera. Gotta keep an eye on that, and then some of you may have noticed, where the coffee cart is going inside of that building that we
Yeah.
had discussed. There's a sign outside that says coffee cart coming soon. So there was an actual complaint about that.
About the sign, the sandwich board sign.
Because it was an automatic assumption that the coffee cart was gonna be outside. So I had to take the time to go down there, speak with the owners and verify that it was not, and this is just stuff that takes up.
Yeah,
Which I don't have enough of.
Yeah.
And it's just
Right.
it's getting crazy, and some of these people like I get called about dogs yesterday, because
You're a
Trish
dog
Davis.
catcher?
Trish, yeah, apparently, Trish Davis wouldn't do anything about these crazy dogs that are running around and they're growling at people, Anyway, I got rid of
Just
that,
growl back.
yeah.
Don't we have a animal control person?
Yeah, she just gave a resignation, and then according to the lady who was complaining, Trish, since she gave a resignation, doesn't want to work. So she just doesn't care.
Okay.
Just silly stuff.
So it's a matter that we need to take up with,
The fickle public.
That's all my, I got that off. my
Right,
plate,
right,
but I don't know anything to do with that.
good, good. It's not your monkey, not your circus. not your
Talk to the
monkey.
selectmen about the dogs. Tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, because they'll do
They're the elected officials. We don't have a dog catching.
They'll have to,
Well,
have to
if
find
there's a
anyway.
dangerous dog, you call the sheriffs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that should
exactly.
be up to the person that's complaining.
Right. And it's not Richard's thing, so,
No, I passed it off.
right.
Good.
It is mine.
So I have a question for you when you're done.
I'm done.
You did put a comment in here about if there's time to discuss the language conflicting between this and that.
I didn't know if you wanted to take the time for that or not. So
I
we
think we
do have,
should.
I definitely think we should.
okay. Everybody should have 3 sets of minutes, by the way.
Yeah.
What's this about?
There's
Um,
conflicting language apparently between two ordinances.
Right.
And so what it was under the CEO update, so he's saying
Richard, maybe
that.
you could explain for us what the
Huh.
Yeah.
issue is.
Just want to make sure I got myself straight here. So the multi-family dwelling ordinance, to my knowledge, has not been revamped, and it is dated in 1978. Right? So a woman wants to put 2 duplexes on the property. And according to the multi-family dwelling ordinance, I think it's the second page if you're looking at, under multi-unit housing definition, it says, shall mean a structure or structures located on a single lot, which structures are designed or used to house 3 or more families. And if we look at the lot coverage, which I think I included the page here.
Don't know if I have that.
Should be towards the back behind the minutes.
I have 2 pages, and the first one comes from multi-family dwelling unit one.
Yeah.
So where are we on that?
Okay, so the multi-family dwelling, I just read to you the multi-unit housing definition.
Yep.
And in the minimum lot standards page, I gave you page 8.
Following page.
B, let's see. Okay, it says, under C, second paragraph, it says, no new residential dwelling unit shall be permitted, which would result in a number of residential dwelling units per lot exceeding 1 per 40,000 square feet of lot area. But the first one that I read says, I used to house 3 or more families, and I guess I just don't perhaps understand that. Understand the differences.
No, you're not the only one.
It's a little confusing.
In the minimum lot size, after the sentence you read, it goes on, not more than 2 residential dwelling units shall be permitted in any one structure.
Yeah, that's where I was getting.
And
So that's telling me that you can have a duplex. And so 2 residential units in 1 structure. And then, but the multifamily dwelling ordinance says to house 3 or more families.
Mhm.
Structures that are designed and used to house 3 or more families. You cannot do that. I guess you could. I mean, if you have 2 families living in one side of a duplex, I suppose. So it's a little confusing, and the woman actually did her due diligence, is asking these questions. I'm looking at, because she only read the multifamily dwelling ordinance. I took out the lot size ordinance, and I started doing a little research, and I came up with, and what the heck, I don't get what's going on here, and what takes precedence, and what she is allowed, is not allowed to construct. My understanding was better of the minimum lot size, because as I understood from when I started, you cannot have more than 2 residential dwellings on in one structure. So you can have a duplex, you cannot have a quadruplex, for
Right.
instance. But this one's saying 3 or more families, and I don't,
Right,
really, you can get 4 families in one side of a duplex. I suppose.
Well, and-
Cranked up, but-
the multifamily dwelling ordinance on C on the page that you gave us, no dwelling shall contain more than 8 dwelling units, so it could be up to 8 dwelling units.
Right, there we go.
So,
Yeah, and then on the following page, just to come back, things. Multi-family dwelling units shall meet the following criteria. This is under section 6, page 2. It says the lot area shall be 1 acre. Well, 1 acre is more than 40,000 square feet, which is what the minimum lot size requirements says. So is it 1 acre or is it 40,000 square feet? Because we're talking about a difference of what, 3,560 feet.
Right.
So I guess I just needed some direction in this. You know, I need to be able to give her an answer.
Well, the only thing I unfortunately can tell you about this is, as a general legal principle, when you have 2 ordinances in conflict with one another, the more stringent it
Right.
applies. And I mean, I've long advocated that the multifamily dwelling unit should be repealed, but that never happened. And that they just be dealt with as a subdivision, because many of them are subdivision as well.
But then you'd be eliminating apartment buildings. You know, like steward apartments or apartments down here where
Those-
affordable housing is getting so lacking. There's no affordable housing around.
Yeah,
anymore.
no, I agree.
We do need.
Those
apartment buildings.
apartments, by the way, were approved under this multi-dwelling unit. And in fact, that this ordinance exists because of when there was a flurry of apartment houses proposed in Belgrade down on 27, as well as the ones that the Days did. But
So my suggestion, seems that we have the lawyer available to us on whatever you want to call
Oh,
it.
China.
Yeah, I have his
Have
information.
him look at the 2 ordinances and see what he has to say about it.
Yeah, because, and then B, right below what I read is another contradiction. It says lot frontage roads, public, private shall exceed by 50% the Belgrade minimum lot size ordinance requirements for each building. So that would make it 300, because our minimum lot size is 200. So if that's exceed by 50%, that'd be 300. So you have to have 300, but I like your idea, Craig, about sending both of these ordinances to the attorney,
Yes,
seeing what he or she thinks.
yeah,
yes.
It's a good idea, because, and when I read this multifamily, it really did come across as applying more towards apartment buildings than it did duplexes. So,
Yeah, in the banking business, usually that term, the real estate business is pretty
Craig's-
much that's apartment buildings, that's all.
Right.
you know.
Craig's right, with a shortage of affordable housing in Belgrade, you know, these kinds of developments are needed.
Yes,
And I'm kind of interested in what to find out the results. So
Absolutely.
I think we all want to hear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
all right, well, I appreciate the input. And I will
Thanks for
follow up with
bringing
the
it up.
lawyer.
I mean,
Thank
you know, in terms of and you see this, maybe even in state law or regulations, the sloppy use of 40,000 square feet equaling an acre.
Right.
Those surveyors that are gonna certify that, you know. But, you know, I mean, in this case, if they meant 40,000 square feet in the dwelling unit as an acre, they should have said that.
Right.
But they didn't.
And, you know, 3,560 feet could be a big difference.
Well, on the shoreline, it would be a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, certainly.
It costs you
Absolutely.
hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy.
right, exactly.
All right, so I will follow up with the lawyer and certainly, when I get a response, I'll let it all know.
Okay,
What
thank you.
becomes of that.
Thank you, Richard. Anything else from
No, sir, that is it. for me.
updates?
I got one question.
Sure.
So far, what is the magical number for you to say, we have a backlog,
We have what?
a backlog of applications? What is the number that raise that flag for you?
I don't necessarily have a number
Mm.
because I look at each one and determine its difficulty.
Okay,
So, an example, the one next week, as I said, Craig might look at it because he's a contractor. Doink, everything just works for him. For me, it's not working. Like, it makes sense, but I think it's something that the planning board would want to delve into a little bit.
Mhm.
And so then, the simple one, the ramp, for instance, that we approved the other week. That to me is simple, so I kind of just weigh the toughness of what we're dealing with and how in depth it is, so it's not really a number, so to answer your question. More a level of difficulty.
How much time might take?
Exactly.
So he has an algorithm he goes through. It's
Yeah.
called
Yeah,
the
right.
Richard's complexity
I just
factor.
wanna.
It's, just Google it, Google it.
It's just, I just
There's
wanna
a calculator out
kind of
there for that.
a hand rule thing that, pick your mind with it, so I have it for reference myself.
No, and I kind of can shuffle things. An example is, I've had a shoreline application for quite some time now. I approached the gentleman because he's never bagged them, and like everybody else does. And I said, so when do you want to start construction? And he said, oh, not to the fall, so if you want to suck me off for a little bit, that's fine. I said, well, that's great. And matter of fact, oddly enough, the Kaplan Thompson one that we'll be doing next week, they can't even start until after Labor Day, but they were bugging me to get this on board.
Yeah.
Well, what if it takes this long? What if we have to go back 3 times?
Yeah.
And that's possible, of course. So, like I said, I'm probably overreacting to looking at the whole plan. Craig would probably look at it, and go, ha, ha, it's simple. Who don't agree? So yeah, so that's what. Boy, you guys give me far homework.
What homework do you got?
Oh, my God. You
No, what
lawyer.
do you have homework for tonight? What do you have to do for?
He's gonna get with a lawyer about
Get with the
conflicting
lawyer.
things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Should have found that permit.
Gotta
Gotta
find
find
the
the old
commercial.
permit.
Yeah.
He's
And then let us
exaggerating
know.
again.
Well, I'm just thinking, yeah, so
I was being a little facetious.
yeah, I know, but get it with a lawyer, you let them know, and it'd be a while, the lawyer's not gonna give you a quick answer. They never do, right?
Right.
I've dealt with lawyers all the time, so
They never.
at least you covered yourself, okay, you
Right.
send them quick email, or you talk to them on the phone first, give them a follow-up email, and then you covered it, don't worry about it. Really, I think you can really do, it.
Once again,
yeah.
it's not a lot of homework.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
All right. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate your time in advance. Thanks for your homework that you're gonna be doing. All right, may we move on to old business, which we have minutes from the May 5th, 12th, and 19th meetings.
I thought we already did the 5th.
I don't remember.
As I remember with the 5th was that Greg was concerned about the numbers for the setbacks, and what was called setback and what was called buffer.
Right, but I thought at the 12th we dealt with that.
And one-
approve it again to be sure.
We don't remember.
I couldn't find anything showing that we did, so I just included them anyway. Cover our own butts.
So in the event that we have not done these already once, have people had a chance to go through them? Any edits? Or remarks? No, Craig? Sarah? George?
No.
Okay. I would like to do these one at a time if we could, so I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes
I'll make a motion to approve minutes as written.
for May 5th. Thank you very much. And a second,
Second?
and seconded, thank you, Sarah. Any more discussion?
Hmm.
All those in favor of approving the May 5th minutes as written? So Craig and Pete, you weren't here, so we're not going to ask you to vote. Sarah,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
and I am in favor. So 4 in favor, none opposed. Next are the May 12th minutes.
Except pen and I this time, because you can't click.
I have a comment about that in a minute. Have, oops. Are we all good on the minutes? Or have people had a chance to review the May 12th minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any suggested edits?
None for me.
Sarah? No. Craig, anything?
So it says also agrees on a 50-foot buffer, but that's. So if the buffer wasn't setback, right?
So you're on
the
page
second page.
2, where it says, it also agrees on a minimum 50-foot buffer along property lines, 200 feet along public roads and 250 feet along common property lines with an existing residential dwelling unit, etc.
That's the buffer, that's not the setback, correct?
That's right, the setbacks were already,
125 feet.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
See, actually, I think that's wrong.
Does the wording need to be clarified?
Well, uh, this is what I phrased before, because I tried to make myself clear that property lines with approved subdivisions.
we agreed on all property lines. Because cut the 250 and a half to 125 for setback from all property lines. Was my understanding.
Yeah, what I had said at the meeting multiple times was that I would agree to the 125-foot setback if the 50-foot buffer was limited to a common property line with a subdivision, approved subdivision, undeveloped or otherwise.
Oh, all right. So it'd be 125-foot setback, but the buffer would only be where,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
So that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
So to clarify that, and so we have it documented and memorialized, how can we edit this to get to the intent and spirit of what you're saying?
So there's only 25-foot buffer. That will cover both sides of the property line.
I'm not sure, Sarah. I think we're on the spot, George, we're about the 50-foot and then
Yeah.
to be put in the qualifier.
yeah.
Uh,
Also agreed, I guess, on a minimum 50-foot buffer along property lines in common with approved subdivision.
Ooh, that's pretty good. 'Cause
Jason.
Capture.
maybe, can you say that one more time? Because I think that's pretty good. Also
So
agreed.
it also agreed on a minimum 50-foot buffer along property lines in common with an improved subdivision.
Ooh, I like that. In common. Craig, does that make sense?
Mhm.
So in
So that
common-
means that it's gonna be 25 feet on one side of the property, and 25 feet on the other side of the property line. To make a total of 50.
No,
No.
it's all on the development. We have nothing to say what's on the other side of the property line.
And this is buffers, not setbacks.
Right,
So we're not talking setbacks here. So what he's just saying, so 50-foot buffer, it won't be on the back property where there's nothing approved. It will just have a setback back there,
Okay,
but not a buffer.
okay,
So the buffer will just be about around residence, which is the 250, and 200 from the road, and 50 foot from an approved subdivision.
okay, understand. Thank you. I appreciate
And
that,
then
right?
beyond the approved subdivision, if it's just a back lot, it doesn't have to be a buffer. But
Okay.
there still has a setback.
All right, thanks.
Does that help?
Hmm,
Okay. Thank you, George. So that, I think that's a good sentence to include. So are you suggesting that, so the sentence in the middle of that paragraph that said, it starts off with, it also agrees on a minimum 50-foot buffer, and then how you said it?
yeah. Do you want me to reread it?
Sure.
And just to be clear for the record, we're on the second page, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Starting at the far right, it also agreed versus agrees on a minimum 50-foot buffer along property lines in common within an approved subdivision, 200 feet along public roads and 250 feet along common property lines with an existing residential dwelling unit, though no more, well, and on it goes.
Yeah. I like that. That can work. Sarah, you good?
Yep.
Craig, you good with that?
So then down below public recreational and scenic resource to include the lakes, the Minot Hill Road, highest portions of every golf club and elevations of 600 feet or greater accessible by a public road. I don't remember the public road, but we're also missing the West Road. And did we agree on 600 or 450? Don't seem to
It was
remember.
450 by the golf course so that it would capture the parking areas, because we didn't have a name for it. I don't know if you recall that. There was no name on any of the maps.
Right.
And then the West Road got captured by the 600-foot elevation
So it's
rather
only,
than by name.
so it's only 450 feet for the Belgrade Lakes Golf Club.
Yeah, so that, it captures those parking areas where the public can go. They allow the public to go to get a view of the lake. Not to mention their own clientele.
Does that make sense?
So Howard Hill and Mutton Hill. They wouldn't be included in that because it's not a public road.
I'm sorry, Craig?
So Howland Hill and Mutton Hill and stuff like that, North Belgrade wouldn't be included in that because it's not a public road.
Right, not accessible to the public. The consequence.
Make sure we read that when we go to the next group.
Okay. Good, okay. So we know we have to edit, and thank you for doing that. Are there any other edits to include on this set of meeting minutes? So therefore, I entertain a motion to approve the May 12th minutes as amended.
So I will put a motion to approve the May 12 minutes as amended tonight.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And seconded. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Craig? Yes. Sarah?
Yes,
George?
Yes,
And I too am in favor, 4 in favor, none opposed. On to the minutes from May 19. We had a quorum that night. Did you come in? You came in, Sarah,
halfway.
halfway, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So any of the ordinance stuff, I cannot say anything. Maybe I should recruit myself
Want to?
from there,
Okay,
from more.
Yeah, the
Richard,
problem with
Richard's
that
not
is
here.
Rich isn't here, so
okay then.
Hmm.
I think we should put this off,
Mm.
these minutes off until we have
Sure.
Rich.
yeah. I can't vote on it.
Yep. So we'll post. We will deal with this next time. I hope. Right, we hope.
What can you do?
But you approved 12, Rich was here.
Right. Because without Rich being here tonight,
Don't have 3 members of this attended the meeting.
Oh.
right,
I'm following. A little slow. but I'm following.
you caught it, it's all good.
Right.
Yeah. precisely. All righty, that should. We've done 2, not the 3rd set of minutes. I think that's it for tonight, so motion to adjourn
Motion to adjourn.
and
Second.
seconded. Any more
Motion to
discussion?
adjourn.
Craig, you in favor of adjourning? 1, Sarah,
Yes.
George,
Absolutely.
and 4 in favor. Good night. Thank you. Richard, thank you very much.
I abstain.
Okay, all right,
You stay here, Pete?
all right. So I think. Pardon me. So Richard, I'm going to stop the recording and then end the meeting. Yes, I